Hi friends, Tiffany here. Welcome to my quilting life. Today we are going to do week 10. 10 weeks. That quick. It goes by so fast, right? 10 weeks. Today's week 10 of the Skulliver. This is a Skulliver sew along. And if you haven't checked out Legit Kits, there is a link up here in the top of the screen, right up there, to Legit Kits. They have more than just Skulliver. You don't have to sew along with the Skulliver, but this video does focus on sewing the Skulliver together. So let's open our books and pull out today's pages. Okay, so we are going to do page 62, page 63, page 64, page 65, page 66, and page 67. So we're going to do pages 62 through 67 this week. And I am going to skip cutting it all out because I'm pretty sure you guys have by now figured out how to do that or gotten a light box to help you along your way. And if you haven't, I showed you how to do it without it as well. My piecing wasn't that great without it, but that's okay. With a light box, it does help. So we're just going to go ahead today and skip right to the sewing of all these. So give me a few minutes while I cut all this out, and then I'll meet you right back here at the sewing machine. So see you in a minute. Alrighty. I've got all my pieces cut and ready to go. So we're going to start with page, this time I got them in order, 62, but the part 1 from page 62. So I'm going to go ahead and fold all on my lines. And we're going to get started. I always stick all my pieces, if you haven't noticed during this, all in the throat space, and they're stacked in order. So when I cut these, I'm cutting piece 1, then piece 2, then piece 3, then piece 4, and I'm stacking them up. I find that to be quite simple in keeping everything in order while I'm sewing this. That way, when it comes to naming off the piece or looking at my color chart, that it's right there and it's the correct piece, and I don't have to go and super hunt anything down. So I'm just going to fold all my lines, and notice that I'm remembering to do that. It's like second nature now. It took a while, but you know, it's week 10, so I should remember to fold them as I go. And folding them just ensures that I know where my pieces are going to lay and how they're going to lay and blah, 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 blah. All right, so page 62, or piece E4C, we're going to start with the bottom right here, which is number 1. That's my number 1 position. So what I'm going to do is bring my light over here, and I'm going to stick this under here and be like, okay, this is where it's going to sit. I have plenty of room for it to sit right there. I'm going to put 1 tack stitch. Oh, this doesn't slide very well on my new light. I'm going to put 1 tack stitch right here. And I'm also going to change my stitch length because I had it in a different mode for earlier when I was messing around with other stuff. All right, so I know that 1 is there, so we're going to fold the number 2 line. I'm going to move the light. Everything's staying pretty flush. I'm going to go ahead and trim with my add a quarter ruler to have a nice straight line to work with for piece 2. And I'm going to grab piece 2, which is P. P is black. Oh, the first one was BO, which is brown. So number 2, piece 2, is black, which is P. So here's my funky piece. I already know that it's oversized. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay this on here and go, oh, hey, that's how I cut it. I'm going to lay it on here nicely, making sure that I get a nice 1/4 inch seam. Nothing's moved or shifted. I'm going to flip it upside down. Oh, we're going on that side. What am I doing? It's going on this side right here. Right there. That's the side it's going on. See? At least I'm paying attention. Somewhat. All right. So between 1 and 2, we're going to sew. Flip that upside down and sew between 1 and 2. I'm going to go ahead and trim away the excess seam allowance if there is any. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Just gonna, it's literally slivers. Okay, so between 1 and 2 is sewn on. It's nice and oversized. Gonna roll it just like this. Okay, now I'm gonna stitch that down so it stays right there. That way it's not flipping around. So that's within the seam allowance. Remember, I'm stitching in the gray area. All right, now we want between 2 and 3. So I'm going to fold back on that line. We're going to make a nice straight line to sew with. So it's a nice 1/4 inch line. And we're going to grab LB, which is piece 3. LB is leather. So we're going to go ahead and grab that from the bottom. And it's going to go this way. So I'm just going to hold this side, flip this over, and lay it on here. I'm also going to roll it over and make sure right there. That's which way it goes. So we're going to go ahead and sew that, and I won't have to trim away a seam allowance on that because I did cut that pretty straight. So between 2 and 3, between 1 and 3, I sewed that line. Just going to go ahead and roll that back. I don't need to trim anything because, again, I cut that pretty straight. And now we're going to go between 3 and 4. So I'm going to peel back the paper, line it up, cut off the excess. And there's a nice big bulkness right there. All right, and we need QI. That's the piece that's going to go there. QI is lemon ice. All right, we're going to see which way I cut it, and I cut it this way. So I'm going to go ahead and flip that over. Again, I'm going to have another piece that I won't need to get rid of the seam allowance because it lines up pretty good. So let's sew between 3 and 4. And I'm going to roll that back. It covers everything. Okay, now between 1 and 5, which is HO. HO is chocolate. Just going to pull that back, fold on that line. Oops, that is not a rotary cutter. That is funny. All right, toss that aside. HO again is this one. So we're going to see which way I cut it. I cut it one way or the other. Cut it this way. So this is the line that I'm sewing on. So again, I'm just going to flip it over. I'm holding it on the side that I cut it. I'm also going to flip it back and make sure that it's positioned correctly. And right about there. Yep. So it's going to go right about here. Just going to leave that right there. We're going to flip it over and sew between 1 and 5. flip it back, and it does cover my piece. That's good. I am going to get rid of some of that seam allowance because it's super duper sticking out down there. All right. Just going to roll it back now. I'm just using my fingers to pry open the pieces. If you see your stitching, then that means it's not tight enough of a stitch. All right, now we're going to just fold on the between 5 and 6 line, make that cut. There we go. My table is making noise, and it sounds like tootin'. All right, so MY is mahogany. We're going to grab that. We're going to see about which way I cut it, and it looks like it's this direction. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it over, lay this on there. I'm just going to hold it real quick, flip it back and make sure, and that's about correct right there. Yep. All right, we're going to go ahead and sew that on between 5 and 6. And I don't need to cut that seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, no, no, no. See, I'm glad I didn't do anything yet. I need to rip that. It is not laying the way I wanted it. So I'm going to go ahead and rip those stitches out. And being very careful while doing so. First rip of today's video. How fun. All right, let's pull all those stitches out. We're going to lay it on the light to make sure this time, because I know I cut it correctly. All right, all those stitches are out of the seam. Let's grab the light and make sure which way. Oh, it goes that way. That's the side I'm supposed to sew on. Look at that. See, it helps to use the light, I guess. All right, I have it the way I want it. Go ahead and sew it again. This time, it should be correct. All right. Now I'm going to roll it back. Look at that. That covers it where it's supposed to properly now. It's a good thing I didn't have to do that multiple times. All right. Now between 6 and 7. So I'm going to go ahead and find my marking for 6 and 7. And we're going to cut the excess away. Some pieces I did cut oversized this time because I'm trying to make sure that I get the best use of my fabric, since I didn't follow the directions of the cutting pages, the pages that show how you can cut your fat quarter and or 16th or 8th of a yard up. All right, this one is going to go this way. Yep, that one goes this way, just like that. So this is piece 7AU, which is gold. All right. All right, I've sewed between 6 and 7. That seam allowance is good, so I don't need to do anything there. I'm just going to roll this back. Make it nice and crisp until it can go to the iron. Just like that, and that all the pieces are now sewn. I'm just going to put a little stitch right here in the seam to hold that down. And there we go. So this piece is done. So E4C, or page 62, is done. Let's go to the second part of page 62, which is E4A. This one has lots of sideways ones, lots of sideways pieces. So let's get rid of this excess paper because this one we're going to need to be super careful with because they're small. Nice small pieces here. All right, let's fold on the lines. All right. Lots of lines here. There's 7 pieces just on this little tiny piece of paper. Very skinny ones. And one more. Right there. Okay, so spot number 1 is P, which is the black. We're going to grab that. And we're going to place it on the light. I need to get the cord, though. It's stuck. Here we go. Much better. All right, piece 1. Let's see how I have this one set up. It's right there, so I'm just going to hold it on that back side real quick. And I'm going to put a stitch up here in the top. And I'm going to put a stitch, make sure it didn't shift, down here at the bottom, holding it in place instead of using pins, because this piece is small, so pins would be really hard to use on this one. All right, piece 2 is T. T is espresso. So we're just going to fold between 1 and 2, trim away our seam allowance. And then we're going to grab 2, which is espresso. So it's a dark brown. We're going to see which way it goes. It goes this way. So I'm just going to go ahead and line it up right here. Flip it over. Yep, that's the right size. We're going to go ahead and sew between 1 and 2. All right, between 1 and 2 is sewn. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that seam allowance because this is a very tight spot here that we're working with. So even those slightest of trimmings help. Okay, we're going to roll that back. Again, it's very small. Very small piece. Oops, and I just made a crease in it because it's so small. There we go. All right, between 2 and 3, 3 is P. So let's fold on that line. We're going to pull that stitching away. So between 2 and 3, let's fold that. Get rid of this excess. We definitely don't want it there. And we're going to grab P, or piece 3, which again is black. I know that I cut it to go this way, so I'm going to go ahead and put it back here like this. I'm just going to fold it and make sure that it's covering where I want it to cover. We're going to make sure on the light with this one because it's so small. Oh, I cut it this way. So before I have to rip, we're checking again. There we go. That's the way I cut it. I knew it was looking kind of funny. There we go. All right, so this is the way it goes. It's a good thing I have the light. So I'm going to go ahead now and sew between 2 and 3. Again, it's a very small piece. All right, I don't need to cut that seam allowance away. It's pretty good. It is covering my piece all the way down to the bottom. I'm just going to use my finger to press this and then give it a roll so that it stays nice and tight. Whew, that's really tight. All right, now let's turn it around and get between 1 and 4. 4 is LB, which is leather. We're going to go ahead and trim on the line. We're going to grab 4, which is leather. Again, a nice skinny piece. Let's make sure the way I cut it, and it's this way. All right, so I'm going to grab like this and flip. That's the way I want to sew it on, just like that. And it's pretty darn tight, so we're going to just go with it. We're going to sew between 1 and 4. Very carefully, like. I don't need to get rid of that seam allowance. It's really tight, but I am going to finger press it because it's nice and small. That's the only thing about paper piecing is you are going to encounter small pieces, even for a big quilt. Like Skulliver is a 60 by 80 quilt, so there's definitely some tiny pieces for this. All right, we're going to go ahead now and fold between 4 and 5. I'm going to just peel that up a little bit. Make sure 4 and 5 right there. We're going to go ahead and cut that away. Tiny slivers. All right, so 5 is YW, which is YW is yarrow. I think this is the way it's going to go right here. I'm also going to hold it because I want to make sure that it covers the top and bottom of this gray section. So I definitely want to make sure that I have it in the correct position, like that, before I sew this on there. So we're going to go ahead and sew now between 4 and 5. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that excess seam allowance. It doesn't seem like much, but it is just slivers in the way of the next small piece. So let's roll it back, and it covers everything it's supposed to cover. Yep. I'm just going to pry it open. I'm going to give it a little bit of a finger press first, and then roll it so it's nice and crisp. All right, here we go. Between 5 and 6, 6 is LQ. LQ is, I don't know at the very moment. LQ is lemon ice. Took me a second to find it on my table. All right, so lemon ice is the next one. All right, how did I cut this guy? Did I cut him this way? I did. This is how it's going to go. Yep, and it fully covers. So we're just going to go ahead, and that's the side that I'm sewing right there. I'm going to go ahead and sew that on there. LQ between 5 and 6. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that excess seam allowance, but first I'm going to make sure that it fully covers. Well, no, it doesn't. It needs to be shifted up a little bit. Looks like I'm going to have to rip real quick, my friends. Second rip of today's video. It's not going so good, is it? But at least you know it can be done. I'm going to just literally scoot it up like 1/4 of an inch, if that. Okay, this is not ripping very well because it's so small. Come on. There we go. There we go. Come on. I'm talking to it like it's going to listen. I seem to do that quite often with fabric. We're just carefully removing it, and then we'll pull away all those threads. Sometimes you just have to pluck them individually, which kind of sucks, but we're making it work. Come on. Come on, right there. No, no. all that first, and then we'll slide it down. I'll bring up the light because it helps when I have to do this stuff. Come on, get out of there, stitches. Pull the stitches out of this one. They do have a seam ripper that has like a rubbery thing on the end that helps with getting stitches out. But it also kind of stretches the fabric. That's the only reason why I don't use it. All right, we need a light. We need a light. We're going to see again. It needs to be up right here. All right, so let's make sure up right here. That's it, right there. So I literally have shifted it down just less than 1/4 of an inch. All right, flip it over and sew it again. Oops, let's pull that old stitch out of the thing right there. All right. Okay, let's make sure now. Oh, that's much better. Much better. I'm glad I ripped it. There we go. I'm just going to finger press it and pull any threads that just so happen to be sticking out. Then I'm going to go ahead and roll it. Whew, this is such a tight little piece here. All right, let's peel this back. We're going to fold on the line between 6 and 7. We're going to give that a snippy right here. And we're going to grab QW, which is, well, I don't know. It's light yellow. My brain is not saying, oh, it's summer pear. It's actually a green. It's reading yellow in the angle and light that I'm in. All right, pull this up to the light. We're going to see. That's how it's cut. That's right there. Perfect. Didn't need a light for that one, I guess. All right, here we go. It's sewn on there. I don't even need to get rid of that seam allowance. I just need to roll it back. Just like that. And there we have E4A, or it's still on page, I forgot already, 62. This was the second part of page 62. All right, so that's done. Moving on. Let's move to page 63. We're going to take our pieces, put them over there. I'm going to cut all this excess away before I start on page 63, because I don't need all that. And one more cut. Notice I'm cutting pretty far away from my gray lines. I save all that for later. I don't want to be too close right now. All right, let's fold all these lines. We're on page 63, or E4B. Okay, that didn't work out very well. Let's try that way. There we go. That's better. All right, and there's a couple down here. And last one. All right, everything's nice and folded. We're going to go ahead and bring up the light, because this one we're going to end up having to pin. So QW, we're going to start with QW, which is summer pear. We're going to see how it's cut, and it's cut that way. So I'm going to go ahead and line this up on here, and since I haven't in a while, we're going to pin this down, because I've been stitching mostly lately. We're going to go ahead and throw a pin in there, just like that. We're going to go ahead and move this very carefully, fold between 1 and 2. We're going to trim that away first. And I have to go over my pin head because it's, notice it doesn't lay flat. Okay, so that's ready. So number 2 is CK, which is cactus. That would be this one. We're going to see which way it was cut. We're going to hope that none of this shifts. I'll lay this on here and go, oh, hey, look, it goes there. I'm going to slide it down just a little bit. Right there. Perfect. So this is where it's going to go. Lining it up. Lining it up. And we're going to sew between 1 and 2. Okay. Let's get rid of some of that seam allowance. But first, let's remove the pin because that is annoying. All right, let's get rid of that. Make it nice and straight. Again, I'm just cutting slivers. Let's roll that back. It covers it beautifully. And there we go. All right, now between 1 and 3. 3 is BI. BI is Bright Idea. That's this wonderful yellow here, but I'm going to keep that right there for a second. We're going to roll this or fold this back so that we cut between 1 and 3. We're going to cut the seam allowance first. All right, we're going to grab the BI. We're going to see which way I cut it. Looks like I did this direction right here. So we're going to go ahead and flip it over, and this nice straight line will be what I sew on. All right, so between 1 and 3, we're going to sew. All right, I'm going to fold it back and make sure, oh, it covered it nicely. That's what we're looking for. I do have a shredding of the fabric popping through there. I want to make sure that's gone. I'm trying to grab all that kind of stuff. That way I don't have to do it later. Anytime the fabric, starts shredding because it's been cut and moved around so many times. All right, between 3 and 4, we're going to go ahead and peel paper again. I'm going to fold on the 3 and 4 line. Cut the seam allowance. Someone did ask me in one of the videos on the comments section and said, why don't I stick my little mat down right here? And the thing is I need to be able to move it so that I can have longer cuts. So that's why I haven't taped it down to my table. Plus I need to be able to access the bobbin area and stuff. So, all right, QW is space 4. QW again is summer pear. Let's see, which way is it cut? This way? It's cut this way. So we're going to go ahead, flip it to this side, this way. Before I do anything, I'm going to roll it back about 1/4 inch and go, hey, that covers it. Just like that. We're going to come down a bit, covers it more, come down a bit, covers it more. That's where we want it, right there. So I'm going to sew between 3 and 4. All right. Let's make sure. Oh, yeah, it's good. Let's get that sliver of seam allowance to go bye-bye. So you can see this is why I keep the mat not taped down so that I can move it. Because But I didn't, it's better cutting up here than it is down there. It was giving me more room for you guys there in the camera. All right, we're going to roll that back. I guess being in the corner of my room, the camera has to be, I mean, I have plenty of room now for the camera, but the tripod still sticks out under my desk. So it's still kind of in my way, but not much, not as much as it used to be. All right, now we're going to add piece 5. So we're going to go down here and pull all these stitches off the paper. We're not yanking any stitches out, we're just moving the paper. We're going to find between 1 and 5. We're going to roll that back. Get rid of the seam allowance. Ooh, which is not cutting because it's so bulky. Right there at that bottom piece. That really made a mess. Clean up mess. Trying to stay clean at the same time. All right. PH is space 5. PH is peach. I'm pretty sure that's the way I cut it because that's the way it looks. So I'm going to add this right here, and just for safety measures, we'll fold it back and go, okay, that's good. That way I don't have to rip anything. I'm going to come over here and sew between 1 and 5. All right. Ooh, look at that. Perfect. All right. I'm not even going to bother. That seam allowance looks pretty good. We're going to split it open with my fingers, roll it. Then we're going to find the next spot, which is PP. PP. What is PP? Well, I don't see it. Oh, it's mac and cheese. I don't know why they just didn't call it M&C. You know? I think this is the way it goes. I do have the selvage, so I'm going to go ahead real quickly and cut right next to it the selvage markings and get rid of that. That way my oversized piece on that angle won't be too hard to make nice. All right, so this is the way it's going to go. Oh, I need to cut first. That would be smart, right? Let's cut between 5 and 6 real quick. Smart. It'd be smart to do that. Go. Get that gone. Sure making a mess today. I guess week 10 is the messy week. All right, here we go. PP goes right here. Let's make sure it doesn't go a different way. Aha, that's the way it goes. Just like that. And we're going to go ahead, lay it on here. I'm going to roll it back and make sure. Oh, yeah, perfect. That's how I cut it. Flip it over and sew between 5 and 6. And I don't really need to get rid of that seam allowance. I'm just going to roll it back. One piece left between 6 and 7, which is QM. QM is marmalade. We're again going to pull the paper away. Going to fold on the line. Cut away all that excess. There's a lot of bulk on this one. It's a little hard to cut right there. Okay. QM is cut this way right here. Go ahead and flip it over. I'm just going to check to make sure. Yep, that's good. And we're going to pull these threads. It's picking up little threads. All right, let's sew between 6 and 7. And this one, the seam allowance is pretty good too, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave that as well. I'm going to finger press right there where all these seams are coming together. It's pretty thick right there. just going to give it a nice press like that. And E4B is done. Look at that. So page 63 is done. Just going to move it out of the way and grab page 64. And this is piece 1 of page 64. I'm going to go ahead and cut off all this excess right there. We don't need all that extra paper. We're going to fold on our lines. Right there. I think this is the part that I've said many times now that takes the longest, is folding all these lines in advance to, I mean, there's probably some people that don't even bother with it, but I think as a beginner you should, because it gives you that pre-fold when you go to put your pieces. It's pre-folded, so that way you can just fold it back on that line and make sure your piece is correct. All right, so let's bring the light up. We're going to grab our first piece, which is AU, which is gold. We're going to lay it on here. We don't need any pins because I'm going to go ahead and stitch it down. Just going to make sure that it stays and doesn't move. I'm going to stitch it on that side and on that side. So there, my piece is held down. You can see it covers all the way around, which is what I'm looking for. We're going to go ahead and fold between 1 and 2. We're going to make ourselves a nice 1/4 inch seam allowance. Right there. Hey, right there. Come on. All right. 2 on E5B is QW, which is summer pear. Pull that from the bottom. I don't know if it really matters. No, it does matter. I cut it this way, right here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this side, flip it over, lay it on here. We're going to make sure that's where it goes, just like that. And we're going to sew between 1 and 2. All right, let's get rid of some of that seam allowance. You can see it's just a little bit bigger than it needs to be. I definitely try to make sure that the seam allowance gets gone on the lighter colors because they're so light and you can see right through them. All right, so that is done. Let's roll this back. Oh, it covers it beautifully. Press it. Roll it. It's nice and crisp. You can see how crisp that is when you roll it. It's nice and crisp. All right, between 2 and 3 now. So let's pull these paper away from the fabric. We're going to cut our seam allowance first. Nice straight line. I am missing this box today over and over and over again. Trying to keep it all nice and clean. It's the OCD in me. All right, NL, nautical. See, some of these pieces, I don't understand where these colors or how they're going to play into it because they're not put together yet. But I'm like, why is there a dark blue next to a little line, like a little green color, you know? Like, really? All right, this goes here. You can see that's my straight line. I'm going to go ahead and put it on there, making sure that it covers the piece. We're going to roll it back and make sure, oh yes, it does. And we're going to sew between 2 and 3. I'm going to get rid of a tiny sliver of that seam allowance right there. Literally is just a sliver. My table. All right, let's roll that back. It covers what it's supposed to. I'm just going to use my finger at first and then roll it. because it's such a small piece. All right, between 3 and 4, again, pull the paper away, exposing my folded line, and make a nice straight line to sew with. And we're going to get P, which is black. I always remember that P is black. All right, and this one was cut kind of funky. So it kind of hangs over because of the way I cut it. We're just going to roll it back and make sure that it covers where it's supposed to. It needs to come up a bit. It needs to come up a bit. There we go. Right there. I'm going to go ahead and sew between 3 and 4. And make sure that it's covering where it's supposed to. Oh my goodness, it is so tight right there. It is right on that edge. That's a perfect cut right there, I guess. Get rid of the excess. We're going to finger press it back first. That way I can make sure that it's fully opened on this one at least. And then roll it. And you can see my piece literally comes right to the edge. Like seriously, it is right there on the edge of the gray. So that's really good right there. I'm going to stitch this to hold it down though. And we're going to move over to 5, which is IK. IK is pickle. So we're going to go ahead and peel the paper. Go to line 5. There we go. There's my 5 line. This is a real tight piece here too. Small. All right. Make a nice seam allowance. IK is pickle. It's definitely cut this way. We're just going to lay it on there. It's a really tight piece. Go right there. I'm going to sew it on between 2 and 5. All right. Oh yeah, let's get rid of that seam allowance. Okay. Now, to roll it back, I'm going to be very cautious with this one. Again, it's super tight because it's super small. Tight places. And then I have a little shredded piece of, oh, it's just thread. All right, let's, between 5 and 6. So let's roll it between 5 and 6. We're going to get rid of that excess. There we go. It's doing it again. Why is my table being so picky today? All right, last piece is MY, which is mahogany, and it's cut this way. So we're going to go ahead and roll it over to this side. Yep, right there. We're going to just lay it on there and sew it on between 5 and 6. Fold it back. Okay, it covers my piece perfectly. Let's clean up that seam allowance right here on this end. Okay, now let's roll it back. I'm just going to use my finger at first because there's quite a bit of seam going on right there. And roll it. I'm going to give it a little stitch right here. That way it holds it down. So piece E5B, or page 64, is done. Now the other side of page 64, which is E5A, we're going to go ahead and get rid of the little tiny piece of paper that's there. I'm going to fold our lines. All right, piece 1, LB, is leather. So we're going to go ahead and use our light to see where it's going to sit. It was an awkwardly cut piece. All right. There. Okay, so I'm going to hold this right exactly here. I come over to this and stitch on the seam to hold my piece in place. So I'm just stitching in that seam allowance. We're going to fold this between 1 and 2. Trim off that. Okay, piece 2 is QI, which is lemon ice. I'm going to go ahead and go, oh, hey, that's the side I'm sewing on. Let's move that out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and lay this here and look to make sure that it's covering, and it is. There we go. So let's sew between 1 and 2. I lost my foot pedal. It decided to go away from me. All right, before I trim, I'm going to make sure, oh yeah, that covers plenty. But we're going to get rid of some of that seam allowance because it is a sliver too big. Okay, roll it back. Make it nice and crisp. And I'm going to go ahead and stitch the top of this so that it stays. There we go. That's being held down nicely. All right, between 1 and 3, 3 is BO, which is brown. We're going to go ahead and fold on our line first. Get rid of that excess. BO is brown. We're going to grab brown and see which way it goes. It goes this way, holding the side that I want to sew, lining it up, and sewing between 1 and 3. Okay, I don't really need to get rid of that seam allowance. It's pretty good. All right, I'm going to roll that back. And we're going to fold between 3 and 4. 4 is HO. HO is chocolate. Go ahead and get rid of the excess. We're going to grab chocolate, which is this one. It goes this way. Here's a nice straight line to sew on. I'm just going to lay it here. I'm also going to roll it over to make sure it's covering. That doesn't look like the way it's going to be. How about this direction? This direction looks better. Let's make sure. We always got to make sure with these funky pieces. All right, that's the way it goes. We're going to keep that right there on that line. We're going to sew between 3 and 4. There we go. Pick up the paper. All right. All right. I don't need to get rid of that seam allowance. It's pretty straight. And the last one for this page is MY, between 4 and 5, we're going to just rip the paper, fold it, cut it, and sew on our MY piece, or piece 5. All right, let's see which way it's cut. Looks to be this direction. So I'm going to go ahead and lay it over here, and we're going to fold it and go, okay, that's the way it goes. I'm shifting it this way a little bit because it is kind of crooked, so we want to make sure that when it's folded over at its 1/4 inch line right here, that it covers that whole side right there. So we're just going to sew this last piece on here. Oops, making sure that it's over. All right, now between 4 and 5. And we're going to roll it back and see, having it over that way some, make sure that it's covering this one and that one right there. So we're gonna, that doesn't need to be cut away. It looks good. We're just gonna roll it, and then I'm gonna go ahead and put a little stay stitch right here in the bottom, just to hold it down, so that way it's not gonna fly around. And there we have E5A, or page 60, I don't know what, 64, complete. So from here on out, I'm going to go ahead, like usual, we're going to sew page 65, and I'm just going to go ahead and do 65, 66, and page 67, all in time lapse. So I will see you at the end of the video, but let's get started on these in time lapse. All done. Now to trim. Okay, now to file them in the book. So we're all done. Week 10, pages 62 through 67, all done and in our Skulliver folder. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. The costume change, I think you saw that. It's actually been 2 days since I filmed this. I'm just a little tired and I had lots of things to do. So as long as it gets done, you guys have a whole entire week to piece your pieces. Technically, you have longer because you could take as long as you need. These videos will always be here. So thank you again. Don't forget to check out Legit Kits somewhere up here and see if they have a pattern that you would like to try, because you don't have to do Skulliver along with me. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in week 11. Bye.